Good morning, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining me on the second to last day of February, or third to last day. We have a leap year this year. While we wait for folks to join us, would love if people could hop in the chat and let us know where they're calling in from. Saw a couple of folks hop in the chat and say they're from Canada. So I've got some cool, new, exciting updates for the Canadians in the room. So excited, and glad y'all could make it. All right. As is our custom, we're going to go ahead and give people a couple of minutes to pile on in here, and then we will start things off at 2 past the hour. All right. Well, we are going to go ahead and get things started. So once again, thank you all so much for joining us today. In case this is your first ever Catch Up with Keeper webinar, one, welcome. I'm so glad you could join us. And two, I'm going to explain a little bit about how things work. There are three sort of components of the Catch Up with Keeper webinar. First is I will walk through the latest and greatest in Keeper, what we shipped over the course of the last month. And then second, I will open up things to Q&A. And third, if we have an app showcase, we will reserve some time for that as well. We do not have an app showcase this month. So we'll just be doing the update and the Q&A. With all that said, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and I'll dive in. Okay. First update for you. We have resizable columns on the client list. Specifically, this is for your client properties where this could be most acutely problematic. But this is especially valuable if you have, let's say, a checkbox and you don't need to see it super wide like this. You can now drag it down. If you have a service tier and you've got one thing that's making it super long, you can also now drag that down, make it narrower. And then, of course, longer text fields or shorter text fields, you can choose how these display. And then if you refresh the page, this will stay as it is. So yeah, resizable columns on the client list. This is something that I think is just a super huge quality of life improvement. I hope you all enjoy it. Definitely took some sweating from our engineers to get this in place, but hope you enjoy. Okay. Next, I mentioned I had some Canadian specific improvements, so I'm going to go ahead and show those now. All right. So we have a new report in the Canadian files. You will see a new report called your tax inconsistency report. If you don't have this in any of your files, you can add it by clicking add report here, and then add keeper task will not be grayed out to let you add the tax inconsistency report. All right, let's talk a little bit about what this report does. Basically, what we did is we added this new column here called has tax that shows if there is any GST applied to this particular expense. And if the answer to the question is no, this will show up as no. And then basically we are running a consistency check on whether that transaction has tax or not. So for example, we can see breakfast table right here does not have tax applied on this transaction, but it does have tax on all of the others. So what this means is we can come over here to the transaction line items. We can see for whatever reason, it looks like this was classified to exempt. And so now if we want to, we can switch this over to GST 5% or maybe GST PST. And once we do that, this will switch to yes. And you can see the tax amount updates as well. All right. And then the last major update that has definitely been the main thing that we have been working on over the course of the last month is we released into a public access beta keeper receipts. So for those of you who already attended the webinar of this a couple of weeks ago, this is going to be largely a recap, although we have shipped even some upgrades since then. But for those of you who have not seen keeper receipts before or don't have access to it, I'm going to walk through a quick overview of what it looks like, how it works, and then also how you can get access. Okay, so keeper receipts is right here in this file. My absolute favorite thing about keeper receipts is just how natively it merges with your existing keeper functionality. So keeper has always been about giving you one app to run your close and giving you one app for your clients to communicate with you. And keeper receipts continues that same mandate. So what does that mean? Okay, first and foremost, anytime you want to access keeper receipts, it's right here in your client uploads inbox. So looks pretty similar here, but we added this other transaction files table here below the receipts inbox. And we also added some scanning logic that I'll talk about shortly. So all of your receipts functionality lives right here. And then second is beyond that, we also added the ability, of course, for your clients to upload you files in multiple different ways. So the way they may already be familiar with is dragging and dropping files into the client portal. That works just like normal, just like you'd expect it to. So they can come and drag in a file right here, submit that, and then that will go in as a file in your client uploads inbox. So we can see that will come in here. It will automatically start scanning. And once it finishes scanning, if we recognize that it is a receipt, it will go ahead and pull that down here as well as a potential transaction. In addition to uploading files in the portal, your clients can also forward in emails. So for example, if they get a receipt here in their email, they can forward that. And then they have a specific forwarding email. So in this case, it's democo@books.cc. And they can also even type stuff in here. We'll include the entire forwarded message as what we call a receipt note. So they can say this is sales automation software and go ahead and send that in. May take a minute or two for this to go ahead and wind its way through Gmail servers before it shows up here. But it should show up in here in a second. And then, of course, last but not least, your clients can also text receipts to your practice forwarding email to your practice phone number, which if you don't know what that is, it's in your practice settings, client portal, branding, and practice phone number. So anyone who texts receipts to this phone number, basically, if you have your contact phone number listed on that contact, then it will automatically route that message, that attachment into the appropriate client. Okay, so we can see actually that Gmail transaction did finish scanning and it showed up right here. All right, so that's how you can upload receipts to your client uploads inbox. Your clients can upload files in the portal, they can forward you emails, or they can text you things. One last option here as well is if you have the receipt for some reason, you can add it here by clicking Add Files. Okay, but getting the receipts is only half the battle. The second piece is what you do once you have the receipt. So the first thing that you've already seen happen here is scanning transactions. That scanning process is super quick, but basically what it's doing is it's reading the document. And since not every document is a receipt, the first thing it's doing is it's trying to identify if that's a receipt or not. If it is a receipt, it's going to move it down here to your transaction files. If it's not a receipt, it's going to say the type is a document, and it's going to leave it here in your client uploads inbox. That's great if you have something like a bank statement here, for example, or a credit card statement, and it's not actually a transaction, but your clients are still giving it to you. That way you can move it to whatever storage location you want it to live in without that needing to get commingled with your transaction files. And if for some reason there is a false positive, it does get brought down here to your transaction files. You can click here and move it back to your uploads inbox to bring it back to the top, or move it anywhere by clicking the move file button. Okay, but the heart of Keeper Receipts is the receipts. So let's talk about those now. So with those receipts, what we'll do here is we'll scan all of the data out of that receipt once we recognize that it is one. And then we'll automatically try to do things like suggest how something should be classified. So here, for example, with that superhuman transaction that we uploaded, we'll recognize that the payee here, or the payee here, on the receipt, superhuman. And so we'll suggest that probably matches with the superhuman vendor that you have here. Because we know that it's superhuman as a vendor, we also will suggest things like the class, the description, the expense count, or the category, so that basically all of this coding work is pre-filled for you right here. And then in addition to that, you can also create and use rules, including multiple rules that act on the same receipt. So for example, here we have one rule already acting on this receipt, which is a card rule. What that card rule will do is it will recognize the last 4 digits of a particular card that you or a client uses. So for example, here in this case, we have 2400, and we can say 2400 is the debit card for the Chase checking account. So we know that the payment account is Chase checking. And we can also say, because of that, we can recognize that it's an expense. In addition to that, if we want to make sure that superhuman transactions always get classified this exact same way going forward, we can go ahead and add a vendor rule. And a vendor rule will essentially do the same thing as our suggestions, but codify them into a rule. So it'll say, okay, when we recognize that the payee here on the receipt is superhuman, go ahead and set the vendor to superhuman. We're going to actually remove the type here and the payment account here. So we're just essentially having the essential criteria, the vendor, the category, the description, and the class. And then because those two rules work in parallel, everything will get pre-filled here. And then we can create this rule. Rule creation is a totally optional process, but once we've done that, or not, we can post the transaction, and that will create this as a transaction in QuickBooks. Okay. Another file that we got here. So the second one here is the email that we forwarded in. So if you want to see what the content of that email looked like, you can click this notes option here. And here you can see the subject, the forwarded, any forwarded message content. And then, of course, our client here said this is sales automation software. So if this were a new receipt, if we did need to know how to classify a particular transaction, our clients can give us that information right here in the email, and we'll have it for our purposes. Of course, if they didn't give you that information and you did need to ask your client, your client can, you can ask questions. These will show up as transaction questions in your client's portal, just the same way that an uncategorized suspense transaction will. So maybe you might need a detailed receipt here, for example, one that has line item by line item level description as opposed to just summary how much you spent. Or maybe you just want to know, like, has this been paid, for example? Is this a bill or an expense? So you can ask questions here and they will show up in your portal as well. However, in this case, it looks like we actually have already posted a similar transaction. And that's going to be the last major thing I'm going to talk about today, which is matches. So because Keeper can see all of the transactions in your client's ledger, if we see a receipt that has already been scanned in and posted, or at least we think that might be the case, we'll suggest potential matches. So here, for example, we can see we already have another $99 Apollo transaction for that same date, June 2nd, 2022. And so what we can do instead is, instead of posting this transaction, we can confirm it as a match. And what that's going to do is that's going to take this receipt, it's going to upload it to this particular bill or expense, and then you won't have this, you won't have any worry about duplicating transactions. Okay, so that's a quick high-level tour of Keeper Receipts. So I'm going to pause here now, and I will turn things over to the Q&A. Okay, Shalin mentioned that the tax consistency report would be great if this were actually the tax code instead of just whether or not it has tax. That is something that we're doing some research for. the way we get data back from QBO is a little bit complex. And so unfortunately, that wasn't something we were able to implement in the V1, but definitely something we're researching for subsequent improvements to that report. Okay, for resized columns, will the new width be saved for a saved view? So it's, I believe, I'll have to actually check with our engineers on this one. I'm pretty sure it persists to your particular computer. That way, if you want it at a certain width and your clients or your team member wants it at a different width, they can choose that. You can each choose that. You don't have to sort of have this tied to a particular view across all team members. Okay, Sue mentioned she's not seeing a forwarding email option. That could very well be the case if you are not in the beta. If you are not in the receipts beta and you'd like to be, if you like what you saw here today, and you wanted to try it out, what you can do is you can contact us in any of the myriad ways you can contact us. Probably the most direct is via our receipts feedback email, which is receipts_feedback@keeper.app. I'm going to drop that in the chat. If you send us an email there, we'll get you added to the beta. Otherwise, if you write into our chat, we'll get you added to the beta. If you email any of us, we'll get you added to the beta. So yeah, however you want to get in touch with us, we'll get you added in. There is no more wait list, so anyone who wants can join. Tyler asked if there are timelines for the remaining upgrades to the receipts in beta, particularly the mobile app. So I don't have a particular timeline, although I can say we are definitely working on shipping one. So it's not this is not like tentative or like something we're considering. We're in the process working on turning the client portal into a mobile app that you can use to give to your clients so they can have something downloaded onto their phone rather than needing to visit a web link to upload any receipts. So as soon as we have an update, I will be sure to share that, even if it's just an ETA. But for now, what I can say is we are working on. Okay, Diana asked, is there a way to separate receipts from bank statements? I believe I answered this during the demo, but the answer is yes, we do try to do it for you. So this is what we're doing with that scanning. We have this sort of system where we'll first pass to see if it is a receipt, and then second, we'll take the receipt data, and then we'll try to transform it in your transaction files. But if it's not a receipt, we should just leave it in your uploads inbox so that you can have those statements and then move them wherever you want them to. Rachel asked, can you have multiple forwarding emails for each client? For example, a client employees sending in receipts rather than the owner. This is a really interesting question. The answer is no, you can't have multiple forwarding emails, but actually you don't need them for that use case. So each forwarding email is uniquely tied to that client. But what that means is anyone who wants to send an email to this inbox can do so. So if you have the owner and they send it to democo@books.cc, or if you have an employee and they send it to democo@books.cc, you'll see here in the uploaded by who that was uploaded by, even if that person is not a contact. So anyone here who is responsible for sending documents in for that client can do so here, and you'll always see who they were uploaded by. Okay. Jennifer asked, how does Keeper handle texted receipts when a client has two businesses in Keeper? So great question. We do this with what we call staging areas. I pulled this up last time on the webinar. So I'm going to pull it up here again. I don't have one of those here that I can show as an example. But basically, the way a staging area works is if there is some ambiguity, like let's say that contact has access to two clients, basically you'll see a warning here, and then you'll get this box here, and you can direct the receipt or the texted in document to either of the clients that they have access to. Okay, and very appropriate. The next question is also a staging area question. What happens if you receive a text from a number that is not saved in Keeper? Great question. In that case, it will go to what we call a global staging area. What that means is instead of this just being restricted to the 4 clients that a particular contact has access to, it will just say this was uploaded by this particular phone number. And you can choose any of the clients that you have access to send it to. And then you can add that phone number to someone's particular contact so that you can have them routed automatically going forward. Okay, Ellen asked if we have a client with multiple QBO files or multiple keeper files, text and receipt. Okay, how will keeper know which one it goes to? Okay, same question. Diana asked, so clients can send receipts via text, email, or uploading in the portal. That is correct. Terry asked about space. There are no restrictions on space, so there's no like you don't need to worry about running out of like storage or anything here in Keeper. We keep the receipts indefinitely, and there's no aggregate storage limit at the practice or client level. The only thing is there is a 100 megabyte per file upload limit. Okay, Amy asked, can you create a rule to split a transaction to two different classes or two different categories? The answer is not yet, but we are working on that functionality, so it should be coming very soon. Okay. Samantha asked, does the receipt find matches that are still sitting in the QBO bank feeds? The answer is not currently. We do have some exciting improvements for the Chrome extension to hopefully bring to bear some of the functionality you've seen here into the bank feed. But for now, it's only going to search for matches for transactions that are posted into the ledger. If a client emails a receipt to Keeper that is in the body of the email instead of a PDF attachment, what will that look like in Keeper Receipts? Great question. Essentially, what we do is we just PDF the document. So if it's like a QuickBooks payment confirmation, for example, we'll just turn that into a PDF, and then you'll see it here just like you'd see any other receipt. Okay. Kimberly asks, is the receipt feature available for everyone? It is available for everyone, although you do have to let us know so we can turn it on for you. Just because it is still technically in a beta. That means that it's live. We have hundreds of clients have already, I think dozens of firms have already added hundreds of clients to Keeper and posted thousands of transactions. So definitely past the point of like, this is iffy, like uncertain software. But as we work to polish all of the rough edges and do things like ship a mobile app, it is still currently in a beta. So if you want to be added to the beta, just email receipts_feedback@keeper.app and we'll get you added in. Okay, Juan asked, when you post the transaction, does it add a new expense or does it update the expense already in QBO and attach the receipt? Okay, so as I understand it, the question is, if you post a transaction, like what happens? And the answer is, if you post a transaction as a new transaction, so if we come here and here, I'll just show one example here. If you click post like this, it's going to create a new transaction in QuickBooks. Alternatively, if you match a transaction, it's going to take the existing receipt and upload it to the existing transaction. Okay, Elaine asked, will you be adding the ability for the client note or description to transfer over to the scanned receipt? That's a really good point. Definitely can. Oh, I think this is maybe a slightly separate question, which is if you upload, if your clients upload a receipt to the portal right here and they add a description, it shows up in this table, but then it won't show up in this table down here. That's just a bug, so that should be fixed, I think, this week or next. Okay, someone asked, when will receipts go live for everyone? So it is live for everyone now who wants to try it. You just need to email receipts_feedback@keeper.app. And as far as when it will exit the beta, beta should be going on for at least another month, maybe 2 months. But as mentioned, definitely live for everyone who wants to try it.
Ben, on that note, can you address the pricing as well?
Yeah, great question. So Keeper Seats is $15 per client per month. That is in addition to your Keeper standard or premium subscription. During the beta, however, it's running at a 2/3 discount, so it's just $5 per client per month for any client you add in the beta. Vicky asked, will Keeper match receipt to an existing transaction in the ledger that does not already have a receipt attached? The answer is yes. Yeah, so we're not looking at the I think the example I showed had like 2 or 3 attached receipts already. We're not looking at the attached transaction. Like we're not trying to see, is this the exact same receipt as the one that you have uploaded to a particular transaction. We're looking at the transaction data. So for example, if we see like this was in June, like June 2nd or early June, and then this other one was on June 2nd or early June, and they have the same amount, those are the kinds of things we look for suggesting matches. Renee asked, can this feature be used to create sales receipts for income transactions? The answer is not yet, but that is definitely one of the improvements we have in store for Keeper Receipts. Okay. I'm trying to see if there are any other Keeper Receipts questions here before we go on to address some of the non-Keeper Receipts ones. Diana asked, does the staging area apply to a client who has questions to answer for his 3 different companies? It does not. So the way the clients see things, if they have multiple client files that they have access to, is they'll actually be able to choose which client they're in when they're in the portal. So for example, they'll say 9 questions in other files, and then they'll go in here and be able to toggle through and see those. But so there's no need for a staging area for non-transaction files.
There's a couple more on receipts about whether you can select which clients to apply it to, and about whether the pricing will go up after the beta is finished.
Okay, so you can choose which clients you have access to. So just getting access to the beta doesn't change your billing at all. If you then go to let me see if I can find an example here of one where we haven't turned on receipts. I think this might be a good example. Okay, no. Quick answer is you can choose which clients you enable Keeper Receipts for. And then as far as the beta pricing goes, once we exit beta, it will go up to $15 for all of those clients. If you want, just one quick note on that, if you want to turn on receipts, you can do that by going to a particular client and then going to their client uploads inbox. Or if you want to turn on receipts for multiple clients at once, you can go to your practice settings, all client settings, and then here you can enable Keeper Receipts from right here. Okay. I think that may be most of the receipts questions. Apologies if I missed yours. I will come around back to it. Ray asked, how do you remove template questions in Keeper that you no longer need? Okay, great question. So I'm going to go back here. It's in your templates, and it's right here, template questions. So for example, if you don't need this, you can just click delete right here. Christina asked, will the tax consistency report work with Xero? The answer is not yet, but we are working on bringing it in to Xero. So hopefully very soon. Amanda asked, in project templates, are there any plans to add the ability to customize the text of hyperlink? I think this means to add rich text. So for example, you can say link and then paste in a link, and then the text will only say link. We do want to add that. I can't say it. There is a definitive plan for when that will get added in, but definitely rich text is featured prominently through some parts of the application, and we would like to make that broader in scope as well. Des asked if Keeper doesn't think a transaction is a receipt. Okay, we're back to receipts. If Keeper doesn't think a transaction is a receipt, but it is, so that is a false negative. So we thought something was we thought something was not a receipt, but it is a receipt. You can turn it into a receipt by clicking the Make Transaction button right here. Then when that is the case, it will fill out the fields. So anything that we have recognized, we may not have recognized everything. So for example, it may be missing an amount, or maybe we couldn't read the file for some reason. But everything else that we were able to read will still return, so that things should be pre-filled. Tyler asked if there are plans to allow clients to be able to text in descriptions along with the images they text in. This is something we're working on, although it is a little tricky because whereas with an email, it's all sort of nicely bundled up into a single package. With a text, the files that come in and the messages that come in are not really related in any way. So we're still working on the best way to allow that kind of information to flow into Keep Receipts or flow into at least somewhere else where you can see those. Rachel asked, in the future, will there be an option for the client to select a category or class? So the answer is yes. Definitely working on ways to give your clients, or give you ways to get more structured information from your clients. So not something today, but definitely something we'd like to add in, both for receipts as well as for transaction questions more broadly. Cindy asked, where would we find the global staging area? You'll find it in two places. First is you'll actually see it in your client uploads inbox if you have a file that's sitting in the global staging area. And second is you'll also see it at the top of the client list if you have any relevant files. Cindy asked, is there any expense reporting functionality? For example, if a vendor uploaded 3 receipts that they reimbursed the employee Jane for, the answer is not yet, but we are working on bringing in expense reporting functionality as well. Kate asked, if you enable receipts, are you able to disable it at any time? The answer is yes. To do that, you go to your practice settings, all client settings, and then you just disable the subscription right here. If you do that, you'll have access to keep receipts through the remainder of your billing cycle. So, for example, if you have if your billing cycle is the 1st to the 1st, and you enable keep receipts on the 2nd, and then you disable it on the 10th, you will still have it for the rest of the month. And then at the beginning of the following month, when your billing cycle renews, you won't be charged for keep receipts, and then you will also lose access. Okay. For the client portal, is there any way to bulk change the assignee? I don't believe that is the case today, but definitely something we should add support for. Okay. Maybe a few more questions here, trying to weed out some of the duplicates that I've already answered. Des asked, does Keep Receipts recognize duplicated receipts? The primary way that we recognize duplicated receipts is that we'll look at, basically, if they have the same data. When you post one, that will create a transaction, and then the other one you'll be prompted to match to that same transaction. So basically, the deduplication doesn't happen at the file level; it happens at the transaction level instead. We are working on ways, though, where if you notice that two files, for example, should be merged together, that you can sort of combine them into a single package. So more functionality on that coming soon. But yeah, for now, basically, the deduplication process happens where we look at the file and cross-reference against your transactions. Amanda asked, do we have any plans to add an onboarding section to the client portal? We are working on, I will just say, broader upgrades to the client portal UI to allow you to one, just make the portal more intuitive, easier to use, and two, to allow you to do things like highlight particular, maybe more important questions, for example, so that you could highlight your onboarding questions. So I would say yes to, we do have plans for that kind of functionality. Terry asked, can you download all receipts in Keeper at one time if needed? The answer, I believe, is yes. If not, it is definitely coming soon. You just click the bulk download button right here. Okay, Juan asked, when can we expect Keeper receipts to be available for Zero? Great question. Definitely. Our order of operations here is we want to make sure that things are like good and stable, and we've like hit all the potholes in QBO before we look to add things to Zero. So things are looking pretty good right now, which means I don't have a particular ETA for Zero, but we are encountering fewer and fewer unexpected errors. So hopefully we should have it live pretty soon. Shaolin asked a question about way back with the tax inconsistency report. If you match, can you change? All right, so this is actually receipts. I was wrong. If you match a transaction, can you change the tax code and it will update in QBO? Not yet, but we are working on the ability to allow you to edit matched transactions before you post the file to them. In which case, the answer for my answer is for this question is not yet, but coming soon. Rachel asked, will receipts only post if the transaction is coded or pushed to QBO? Just to sort of maybe clarify this, it will only prompt a match if the transaction is pushed into QBO. But otherwise, when you click post transaction, it will create a new transaction in QuickBooks. Okay, Melissa asks, is there a way to easily toggle back and forth between two Keeper accounts? Like, let's say you have your main Keeper account and you're a contractor, instead of logging out, logging back in. So pretty similar to the way that QBO does things, where you may have access to different files. The answer is not yet, although this is increasingly something that many of our clients need to deal with. So we are researching some potential solutions for that. Renee asked, will the mobile app be usable for client portal questions and communication as well as receipts? Great question. The answer is yes. It will just be the full mobile client portal, but instantiated into a mobile app, so that it will hopefully be, one, a little bit easier for clients to get access to, and two, you can also do things like send push notifications there. One thing I will mention, though, is you can actually, especially, I know this is the case on iOS. I'm not sure if it's the case on Android. Today, you can have your clients download their client portal to the home screen, and it will act just like an app. So it'll open up in a separate window instead of in Safari. So not quite the perfect solution. Definitely, we want to get an app out there, but you can treat the sort of mobile client portal link as an app as well. Okay, not a receipts question. Can you reorganize the column order in the tasks tab? view on the client list dashboard? Okay, great question. So all of the order of the tasks on the client list. So I'm going to go ahead and show what that looks like here. All of these tasks here, so general, payroll, tax, onboarding, et cetera, all of this order is set to match the order on the close page. So if we go into a close page here, it's first your non-closing tasks in that order, and then it's all your closing tasks in that order as well. So if you want to change the order on the client list, you can do that in the same way that you can change the order in the close page, which is in your practice settings. We have this sections tab right here. And so if you reorder any of these here, so let's say we want to move general down to the bottom below onboarding, that is going to move general. Whoops, I probably need to refresh the page here. That's going to move general, as you can see here, down. So we're going to have general at the bottom. And then, of course, also in Demo Co, we're going to see general down at the bottom here as well.
And what about on the task list? I think they were also asking about that.
Oh, can you change on the tasks tab? Okay, I just fully missed that question. Yeah, you can also do this. It's right here. So if you wanted to change any of the order of any of the columns here, you can do that too. Apologies if I misread your question. Hopefully someone else out there had the same question for the client list. So there you go. Okay. I think that's pretty much all of the questions here. So if I missed your question, apologies. I think we're running at around 60 answered Q&A questions. So apologies if I have missed any of your questions here. But yeah, let me go ahead and see if there's anything else here. Okay. All right. So Diana mentioned that they don't see a save option here. If you reorder things, so like let's say if we wanted, for example, our tags here on the left. Oh, this should save. So that might just be a bug. Okay, so good to know. That's probably just a bug. You should see the same sort of saved view here option like this. I think we're just maybe not triggering that for some reason. So I'll make a note there and make sure that gets added in. So yeah, these column orders should be saved to the particular view that you have access to. And same with, of course, if you want to hide certain columns here too. Okay. Rachel asked a good question. If you have repeating work and you want to remove that repeating work without deleting the task, can you do that? So the answer is there's no direct way to remove recurrence. But basically what we recommend here is you can, so let's say we have this weekly bank feed coding task and we want it to no longer recur. Best option here, what we recommend is just marking the task as complete. That's going to trigger a new task to be created here. So now we have the one that repeats on the 19th. And then we're going to go ahead and just delete this task. If we delete that task here, what we can now do is we can retrieve the non-recurring task here that has now been completed. So that's this one right here. Uncheck that. And now we have the same task here, weekly bank feed coding, although it's no longer repeating. It has the same due date that originally carried, and it's now back to in progress. So I know that's a little bit hacky, but that is the workflow that we recommend. Okay, and then one more question from Rachel. Will you be able to assign multiple users to a single task? And the answer is not yet, but we are working on it. So we're working on definitely sort of like multi sign-off, prepare reviewer workflows, as well as like either person should be assigned this task. So definitely working on multi-user assignability. All right. Okay, well, I think that's everything, folks. So thank you for sticking around here for the roughly half an hour of Q&A. Super excited to, I guess, thank you all so much. I know, obviously, mid-February, we're starting to get into the crunch of busy season. So appreciate you all so much for making the time today. If I did not answer your question, I apologize, and please don't hesitate to email us, and we'll get you an answer there as well. But otherwise, I hope you enjoy the rest of your month here, and enjoy the leap day coming up in a couple of days. Your once every 4 years look at February 29th. I will see you all again here in March, if not sooner. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.